Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I'm with Jyotiraditya Scindia, BJP leader, under whose leadership the party has won 19 out of 28 seats in the bypolls held in Madhya Pradesh, whose results have come out only a day or so ago. Well, Mr. Scindia, welcome to ThePrint.
Thank you so much, Jyoti. It's a pleasure always to be with you. And through you also, let me wish you and all your viewers happy Diwali. And may this year be a good one for us, and may we get rid of this corona pandemic that's stricken the world.
Absolutely. And likewise, we wish you and your family a very happy Diwali to you. And I'd like to say congratulations to you, because you have, under your leadership, your party has swept the bypolls in Madhya Pradesh. And a large part of this is because of you, of course.
Well, let me say this, that first of all, as an ordinary BJP worker, all of us in Madhya Pradesh bow our heads to the public of Madhya Pradesh for the confidence that the people of Madhya Pradesh have reposed in us, because these by-elections spanned the length and breadth of the state, all the way from Gwalior Chambal till the Nimar region, which is on the border of Maharashtra, from Bundelkhand and Bhopal division, all the way till Mahakaushal and Jabalpur division. So it's been a resounding reposing of confidence in the BJP. But I think the credit for this must go, first of all, to the leadership of the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi ji, and the BJP President, Mr. JP Nadda, and the Home Minister, Amit Shah, under whose leadership, the combined leadership, the schemes that have evolved, that have really hit the heart and soul of every Indian across this nation. And along with that, also the credit goes to the Shivraj Singh Chouhan-led government in Madhya Pradesh, along with the state president Vishnudat Sharma, and the millions of BJP workers on the ground that have toiled at every polling booth and considered this almost as if it is their own election and a referendum for themselves. And I've seen that happen, work tirelessly to make sure that we get this resounding result.
So you explained to me how important this is and how the bypolls had spanned, in a sense, the length and breadth of Madhya Pradesh. But what's the message? Is the message a resounding rejection of the Congress party, of which you were a part until just a few months ago? Is this a message of how Prime Minister Modi sort of looms large? I mean, we've seen in Bihar how he sort of pulled the NDA through, and the NDA has now won in Bihar. But similarly in Madhya Pradesh, what's been the message of these bypolls?
The message is very clear, because the way we positioned it is the 15-month misrule of the Kamal Nath government, which was characterized by not a single chief minister, but it was a duo. It was a CM and a super CM. So you had Kamal Nath as chief minister, and then you had Mr. Digvijay Singh as the super CM. Which was characterized by two factors. It was a corruption-ridden government from top to bottom. And two, they had completely abdicated their responsibility towards their Vachan Patra or manifesto, which they considered as their Dharam Granth, and consigned it to the dustbin of history. And when I raised both these issues...
You did raise these issues?
Oh, of course I did. Multiple times, across multiple fora. When I raised both of these issues, not only I, but the cabinet ministers, former cabinet minister in that government, pretty much apologized on all TV channels that we have not been able to stop illegal sand mining in the state, and apologized to the people of the state. He's still a member of the Congress party. Another cabinet minister from the Malwa region, Umang Singhar, wrote a letter to Sonia Gandhi, very clearly characterizing Mr. Digvijay Singh and Mr. Kamal Nath as running a illicit liquor trade and a sand mafia and a transfer udyog. And these two members are still members of the Congress party. So when I raised these issues at multiple fora, I was very kindly told by my former chief minister, Mr. Kamal Nath, to hit the streets. And so that's what I did.
But did you also write to Sonia Gandhi when your former colleagues wrote to Mrs. Gandhi, and did you write to her as well?
Well, I don't want to go back into that part of my past, but suffice to say that I raised it at multiple fora within the Congress party, right up to the highest level. But I would not want to talk about my past, Jyoti, because I live in the present and I try and envision the future. And therefore, I'd like to talk about the here and now as opposed to the then and there,
No, of course.
if you may.
No, of course, we will talk about the here and now and the fact that you are a very successful leader in the BJP. I mean, the Congress party is probably kicking its heels and wondering why they let you go. But I'm just wondering, the fact that you've swept MP, well, how come the party did not see this earlier? And did they respond to you when you raised these issues across these fora? Did they respond to you at all?
Well, as I said, Jyoti, I don't want to live in the past. And let me also say this, that I have maintained, and these are my values, I've maintained a certain dignity of silence for the last 8 months on these issues. And I'd like to maintain that dignity of silence going forward as well.
Sure, fair enough. So explain to me, now that you're in the BJP and how does it work? Do you speak to Mr. Shivraj Singh Chouhan regularly? He is the chief minister, but so ये जो मेल है आप दोनों के बीच, how does it work?
We are in regular contact, almost on a daily basis, and I must give him full credit for many things. The way he took on the challenge of Corona in Madhya Pradesh. Mr. Kamal Nath had no time to hold even a single Corona meeting. He had time to attend the IFA Awards in Indore, but no time for Corona. So the way the Shivraj Singh-led administration took on the Corona pandemic, and at the same time, multitasking and developing a blueprint for the state in terms of development and progress for farmers, for Adivasis, for city-centric projects. And on the third level, looking at these 28 assembly constituencies and developing a very focused blueprint for these 28 assembly constituencies of development and progress, where we have sanctioned projects worth between 200 to 300 crores per assembly to almost 2,000 crores in each assembly constituency. So the Kamal Nath government, which kept crying hoarse that there is no money for any work, which led to the frustration of these MLAs.
But was there money, or was there no money, or was the state?
Well, Mr. Shivraj Singh Chouhan has provided those funds for every single assembly constituency, and so therefore it's been a very
come from the center, and the center, the BJP is in power at the center, so perhaps it's been easier.
Not at all. In fact, in the 15-month Kamal Nath government, there were even more funds, because don't forget that that was pre-Corona. Mm-hmm. This is during Corona. So during Corona, the centers also had a paucity of funds. So in fact, they were much more flush with funds. And to give you an example, the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, Mr. Kamal Nath locked up 7,500 crores in his treasury, which belonged to the farmers. Within 10 days of Shivraj Singh coming into government, he made sure that the farmers got the money that was their due. Another point I'd like to make is that it's, and I think, you've been a veteran of looking at politics very closely for over 2 to 3 decades, if not more. Mm-hmm. And I think it's probably the first instance in India's political democratic history that a party has formed a government after 15 years being in opposition, and within 15 months has lost the confidence of 16 legislatures and 6 cabinet ministers
of
that government.
Right.
So, and 22 MLAs, of which 6 are cabinet ministers. So obviously this chief minister, Mr. Kamal Nath, had something outstanding within his character, that he could lose the trust and faith of 22 legislators, of which 6 are members of his own cabinet. And not only that, but 3 months afterwards, another 3 MLAs lose trust and faith in him. That takes the total to 25. Yeah. And on Dasera Day, you have another MLA who loses faith in Mr. Kamal Nath again. 26 MLAs out of a total family strength of 114. So you're talking about almost close to about 27%.
Right.
I think that's a feat that no chief minister has in the history of democratic India achieved what Mr. Kamal Nath has been able to achieve.
No, but a lot of these MLAs, of course, are also loyalists of yours. And but my question to you.
No, but each single MLA, let me tell you, was highly frustrated, was highly demeaned, was highly insulted, because when they went for work, they were told one of two things. Either I have only 24 hours in the day, so say whatever you have to in the next 2 minutes. And this includes cabinet ministers. So you can imagine if this was the state of cabinet ministers, what would be the state of the public of Madhya Pradesh?
So Kamal Nath suggested them.
Or the second answer was, I have no money. I have no money.
So
if that's the reason that you're chief minister, if you have no money, then you might as well vacate the chair.
So this is what Kamal Nath said to them, and all of you must have been furious.
Well, in fact, let me say this, that these 26 sacrificed their cabinet ministership, which is again unheard of probably in politics in India, where normally where MLAs normally switch parties probably 6 months before election because they don't want to be part of a sinking ship. Yeah. But here, within 15 months of a government being formed, you have 25 MLAs leaving. It's historic what Mr. Kamal Nath and Digvijay Singh have achieved. But probably no one in any political party in the country has achieved what the two of them have achieved.
But didn't they try to stop you and assuage you and say that they will find the money for the schemes that you were looking for?
They both certainly did, because they very compellingly told me कि सड़क पे उतर जाओ.
And then there was a lot of bitterness in terms of insults and barbs being traded. You were being called a gaddar and all kinds of other names. How did that go down?
Well, I only said one thing throughout the campaign, Jyoti, and those barbs and insults and very derogatory names, and I don't want to even take those names on your show, because it was not only the words that you mentioned, it went much worse than that. Towards me, towards Shivraj Singh, towards minister in the government. I had said only one thing throughout the campaign, that I believe in maintaining a certain standard in life and in politics. There is a certain ethical standard below which you must never go. And I never used any of these names for anyone in public life in 20 years. And I said the answer will be given by the people of Madhya Pradesh on the 3rd of November. It will be locked in a box. And on the 10th of November, it will be put forward in front of 130 crore people of our country. And I said कि दूध का दूध और पानी का पानी होगा और जनता ही जवाब देगी, और 10 तारीख को जनता ने जवाब दे दिया.
So were you hurt by these insults? I mean, I know you're saying that you maintained a decorum and you maintained this dignity, but you must have been upset by it. And one of the reasons, and one of the things, that a lot of people said at the time was that the reason you quit was because you wanted to become Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh.
Well, I think I've answered your first question already, because I believe everyone in politics says that you must have a Teflon coating. And therefore, the invectives that are hurled at you, you must just, Hindi mein shabd hai na ki sahan shakti honi chahiye. And Atalji had once said, and I remember, he said, Zindagi mein jo bhi mile, wo bhi sahi, aur ye bhi sahi. So I take inspiration from that. And as far as your second question is concerned, I think, Jyoti, you've known my father and me both long enough. And our ambition in life is not a nameplate, is not a chair, is not a position of power. We are not in politics. I am in public service. And for me, my goal is public service, and politics is only a route towards the achievement of that goal. And therefore, for me, chair and position is not important. And I think I have lived that out and you've been a witness to that in 2018, when there was a very fierce contest for the PCC president of Madhya Pradesh. And for reasons best known to my party and whatever decision they took, they chose someone else. And I fully supported that decision, and I worked my guts out in that election campaign, which you also witnessed, following which a government was formed in Madhya Pradesh. Again, my political party took a decision to make someone else the chief minister. I readily, and you again witness to that, I readily acquiesced within 5 seconds. And I said, I will support this decision completely. And when the bitter end came, ironically, on my father's 75th birthday, on the 10th of March, if that indeed had been my pursuit, then Shivraj Singh Chouhan would not have been the chief minister of Madhya Pradesh. And I made it very clear that my ambition and my goal was not for a chair. When I was told that Shivraj Singh Chouhan would be chief minister, I welcomed it. And as you've seen in the last 8 months, we worked very, very closely together. And I find myself privileged to work side by side with him, if not under his leadership in Madhya Pradesh.
You know, the portrait of your father is hanging on the wall and you're sitting in front of it, and it brings back a lot of memories. But I'm just wondering, your father spent his a large part of his adult life in the Congress party. You spent a large part of your adult life in the Congress party. And to leave on this very bitter note, and you know, you said earlier that you had raised a lot of these issues at the highest fora, I imagine Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi, but it still must have hurt.
Well, no parting in life is without pain. And if indeed it is without pain, then you're not that human and you're very mechanical in life.
Were you angry too?
I don't want to get into that, but all I will say is that it is now my past. I have moved on.
Right.
And today I'm a dutiful worker of the Bharatiya Janata Party, and I will do my utmost to keep that saffron lotus flag flying.
Well, that's interesting that you're using these words, because in a sense, the Bharatiya Janata Party is something that you also know. Your grandmother co-founded it. Rajmata Scindia co-founded it in 1980. So how did you feel? I mean, was it like a homecoming of sorts? How was it?
Well, you pretty much said it, because unlike for a lot of people, for me, this is very familial surroundings, because three generations of Scindias have had very deep connections with this party. As you mentioned, my grandmother. My father started his career in the erstwhile Jan Sangh, and now me. So for me, it's not shifting gears to a completely different environment. It's an environment that my family has known for many generations. And also, let me say this, that it's an organization where I've had relationships across the board, even though I've been on the other side. I believe in life, relationships are important, and political divides should not necessarily cut you off from relationships, because people to people relationships are, what we are made of at the end of the day.
What does that mean? Are you saying that you're in touch with your friends in the Congress party even now?
Well, I'm in touch with anyone with whom I've had a relationship with across many parties. Mm-hmm. Why only the Congress? I have relationships across multiple parties, whether it is the TMC, whether it is the Biju Janata Dal, whether it is the JDU, whether it is any political party. Where all of us in Parliament have friendships that range across the spectrum.
So how do you look at the BJP? You know, it is your party right now. It's your chosen party. But is it the party of the future? What's the role of the Prime Minister? How does it work?
Well, I certainly believe that it is the party of the future, because it is a party. Please understand, that at the end of the day, the DNA of the party is based on two very basic fundamental criteria. Number one, it is deeply ingrained with the connect with the grassroots of India. And therefore, and combine that with a very meritocracy-driven organization and a very disciplined organization. And that has really led to finding a space in people's hearts. And when you add to that the huge charismatic personality of Mr. Narendra Modi as Prime Minister, kind of personality that probably this country has not seen in probably in its history, it forms a colossus. And I believe that under his leadership, not only will India prosper, but I think the global order also today looks up to his leadership. And India has risen in the Committee of Nations due to his leadership over the last 6 years.
You know, when I asked you about the role of the Prime Minister, what I'm wondering is that it always seems as if the Prime Minister is pulling the party out of, any problems. So, for example, in Bihar, Nitish Kumar would have certainly lost.
See, Jyoti, in the Bharatiya Janata Party, and this is the winning combination, it has a colossus of a personality.
How would you describe it? Would you compare him, say, with Indira Gandhi, who was also this very tower?
I don't think you can ever compare two individuals, because every individual lives in their era. And I think in today's era, not only in India, but in the world, I think Prime Minister Modi is regarded as one of the world's tallest leaders. And I think that's a huge benefit to us as a nation. Forget about just the Bharatiya Janata Party. So his stature goes beyond the BJP. But the point that I was making is that you have a combination of a huge colossus of a personality, such as the Prime Minister, and you combine that with a very grassroots-driven organization that has almost like a neuron connection and a syncretic connection with the people of India. And therefore, the feedback mechanism...
That's the RSS, right? The RSS cadres.
No, I'm talking about the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party. I'm talking about
as well. No, that they have
both. But I'm saying even the party itself, and therefore the feedback mechanism is so quick and immediate, and therefore immediate strategy is developed based on that. And I've seen that in the last 8 months that have been an ordinary work of this party.
But give me an example.
For example, in this assembly election, when we looked at assembly by assembly, what strategies need to be evolved, and on a day-to-day basis, feedback came from our grassroots workers that this is what we need to do. Here is where we need to amend our strategy and look at maybe a developmental issue, or look at bringing in certain leaders who have a massive base in this area. And then action was taken on that immediately. And within 2 or 3 days, you see a turnaround happening in that sector or that mandal of that assembly constituency. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about immediate action and sort of a synapse neuron engagement happening on an immediate basis. And that's what's the electrical energy within the Bharatiya Janata Party. And then you add to that the colossus of a personality of Prime Minister Modi, and it becomes something that immediately places a huge place in people's hearts.
So I think that's the question, is that, the polarizing that I'm talking about, what's happening in our country over the last few years, is that Muslims are feeling much more insecure than they have been previously. And for example...
I want to understand, where is the polarizing? Elections have been fought in every state. Talk about the Madhya Pradesh by-elections.
Uh-huh.
Was there any polarizing in the Madhya Pradesh by-elections? We talked about development. We talked about progress. What does Prime Minister Modi talk about? He talks about the Jan Dhan Yojana. He talks about empowerment of women. He talks about upliftment of poor. He talks about PM Awas Yojana.
They also talk
So,
about the Citizenship Amendment Act, that everybody else can come into the country except Muslims.
if there are people of Indian origin who are Hindus who are persecuted in another country, what is wrong with allowing them in?
Well, Muslims can also be persecuted, Mr. Scindia. It's not that they can't be.
No, but if you are of Indian origin,
yeah,
and you are a Hindu and you are persecuted in that country, what's wrong with allowing them in?
No, there's nothing wrong with allowing people who are persecuted.
So why should anyone have an objection to that?
No, there's no objection to the fact that people who are persecuted are being allowed to come in or are being given citizenship. The problem is that the persecution is limited to just some religious denominations. It's not open to Muslims, it's open to everybody else.
Well, let me say this, that you have it all across the spectrum. But the important point is that what I find very surprising is that when you raise it at one end of the spectrum and not at the other end of the spectrum. There have also been many speeches at the other end of the spectrum.
No, I
believe that at the end of the day, we live in a secular country where every faith must have respect and every individual must have a right to practice their own faith and take pride in their own faith. And if you're a Hindu and you take pride in your own faith, why is that frowned upon? I'm saying the bottom line is I'm saying that you must have the ability in a secular democracy to be able to be proud of your faith, practice it, and at the same time have respect for everyone else's faith.
We've seen in the recent bypolls that the BJP has swept a couple of states, Karnataka, Gujarat, done very well in Madhya Pradesh, barely pulled through in Bihar, but that again, like I said, was due to the PM. I believe that he sort of pulled it out of the works. Now,
sure.
What is the reason for this? How is the BJP sweeping state after state, poll after poll, election after election?
Very simple. I mean, again, it's something I've already mentioned to you before. It's the combination of the Prime Minister's colossus personality based on the delivery record over the last 6 years of very focused schemes for every single section of India's democracy, India's public, whether you talk about Adivasis, whether you talk about the PM Awas Yojana, whether you talk about the gas Yojana, whether you talk about development projects, combined with the robust organizational system of the Bharatiya Janata Party to take that message right till the grassroots. So it has to be a combination of both. And that's the magical combination that the BJP has. And the faith of the people of India is very clearly with Prime Minister Modi and the Bharatiya Janata Party, based now on his track record also over the last 6 years.
But is it also that, he doesn't really have an alternative? I mean, the Congress party is pretty much decimated.
Well, I think that if you look at him individually, I think his personality is so towering and his performance is so towering, whether it was as the Chief Minister of Gujarat or as the Prime Minister of India, that then when one looks at the other side, there's
at the
across the board. I think the people have belief in an individual in India, and that individual is Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
But when you look at the other side, what do you see?
Well, I'm in the BJP, so I'm only looking at Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
No, of course you are. But I'm just asking, when the people of India look at the other side, what do they see?
Well, I don't think the people of India really look at the other side because they see Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Okay, so they see Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the BJP and across the aisle.
No, because they have belief in him, right? So when you have your trust in your belief in an individual and that individual delivers for you, then there's no need for you to look elsewhere. The alternative question comes up when you have a question mark in your mind.
So should the Congress take a leaf out of the BJP and
I'm not going to be prescriptive towards what the Congress needs to do. The Congress needs to set its own house in order. What it needs to do, it knows best. I'm no longer a part of that organization, and I don't want to be prescriptive towards them.
So last question, during one of your campaign rallies, and this video went quite viral, you said ki haath pe nishan do instead of saying ki, kamal pe nishan pe vote do. So was that like a slip of the tongue, or what was it?
None of us are infallible. We're human, and so that was a slip of the tongue, and I corrected myself immediately.
And did that go down badly in the party?
I think we're all human, Jyoti. I think we all make our share of mistakes, and that's fine. You pick yourself up and you move on.
Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia, thank you so much for talking to ThePrint. Thank you for your time, and we wish you.
It's been a pleasure, and a happy Diwali to you, Jyoti, and to the family, and to all your viewers.
Thank you so much. Likewise, and all the best in the BJP and in Madhya Pradesh, where you've done so well. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.